Today on Chainlinked, we'll speak with Kieran Warwick, co-founder of Illuvium, a AAA game being developed on Ethereum. We talk about the Metaverse, NFTs, and what it means for gaming. This was an interview done for the DeFi Live virtual conference in November 2021, and we've edited out a few minutes that focus on visual elements for this audio format. So stick around for it. Chainlinked is a Web3 podcast series talking to the builders in the Chainlink ecosystem. We get to know the human side of the people bringing the many applications of Chainlink blockchain middleware to life. My name's Dr. Andy Boyan. You can call me Andy, and I'll be your host. Gaming in the blockchain metaverse, graphics, gameplay, and skin in the game. I think there's a lot there to unpack. So have you done much thinking about this term that's kind of taken over in the past couple of months, the Metaverse? What is the Metaverse, Kieran?
Yeah, so I started thinking about what this term is and how to best describe it. And it's definitely a buzzword out there now. And of course, Facebook had to jump in and totally rename themselves to Meta, which, gets everyone around the world talking about what actually is this metaverse. And for me, it's essentially about turning real life into a digital immersive world. And when I think about that, I'm thinking things like concerts, real estate. I'm thinking things like recreational activities. Like there are so many things out there that you could do in the metaverse where, I'm petrified of heights, for example, right? And I'll never jump out of a plane. But if you put me with, some sort of AR technology or some sort of immersive device, goggles that I'm wearing, and I feel like I'm safe in my own home. However, I've got the exact same adrenaline rush and feelings. I'm up in that plane and the guy just boots me out of there, similar to what I think Fortnite is eventually going to turn into. You're jumping out of a plane, then I'm in. I'm going to do that kind of stuff. And so that to me is basically what I think the metaverse is going to turn into. There's a whole bunch of people that are building their own metaverse, and I'm very much against that, right? I think there can only be one metaverse. It's very similar to the internet, right? Like collectively need to come to a point where, and we're a long, long, long way off for things like interoperable assets and stuff like that, where large scale companies are actually collaborating and building this stuff to work in this metaverse. But I think it's wrong to say that each game that's out there is building their own metaverse, right? You're building inside this digital immersive world.
Yeah, I agree with parts of that. Just for context, my background, I'm a former media professor. I studied not the metaverse, we didn't call it that at the time, but telepresence and immersion and virtual worlds as part of something that people were seeking. Game designers were trying to build this, technology designers were trying to build this, and there were a great many questions about how do you create these feelings of immersion? And one of the really key findings that I've pulled out from my time way back when is it's not just like a visual sensory immersion. There are other elements of, living in virtual space that are not visual, such as communication, just like this. I can talk and you can hear me, you can talk back. You're in Australia, I'm in the United States, we're on literally different sides of the world, but it feels like a natural conversation. It's extremely immersive right now. This is it. Right. So to me, according to that definition, we're in a metaverse right now. We interact with it every day. The internet is already part of that. And so that's why I agree with, what you're saying is, I don't know that we're all building like individual metaverses in every game, but rather that this is part of a larger technical social phenomenon whereby we're just interacting like we do in the real world in virtual spaces.
Which is 100%, which is crazy, right? If you think about it, before COVID, it was almost rude to schedule a meeting unless you're obviously overseas and it needs to be a teleconference and whatever. But if you're in the same country, you're talking about you're getting on a plane, you're packing your bags, you're wasting your 3 days to get over to this 1 hour meeting. And it's the exact same thing, just done virtually. And so I think that was a big, big turning point. And I'm glad you mentioned that we're literally in the metaverse right now, because that showed a lot of people that maybe we don't need to go back to the traditional ways. Maybe it is just as good a conversation and a meeting, and the same result is going to come from just talking virtually.
No, and there's a lot of other components besides the social, right? This is what blockchain brings is value transfer, where we have digital assets that are like real assets. They're just kind of parallel. And it feels, instead of virtually sending some pixels, like, no, I'm sending something of value over the internet, which is why this whole thing ties in together. But you're founding a gaming company. So I want to talk about gaming and the metaverse. What is it about games that kind of lend themselves to this metaverse idea, whether or not it's the overall metaverse or, separate metaverses that people think they're building? How do you see gaming as fitting into that?
I'm definitely a believer of things like digital real estate and, sporting and concerts and all of these other concepts, which you could definitely fit inside the metaverse. But I think gaming is probably one of the biggest draw cards to a metaverse. And it stems back from movies like Ready Player One. And I think the first time the metaverse was actually coined was back in a book back in like the 95 or something. And so this has been talked about for a long, long, long time. But what gaming does and what this AR technology and these VR headsets that are getting so good now to the point where you literally feel like you're there, it's such a compelling reason to immerse yourself into it because people want to live and people want to feel the real life feelings of things that are not possible. If I want to go back and go, what did it actually feel like to be a soldier in World War II? Call of Duty 25, which is going to come out, in, I don't know, 20, 30 years, I believe that it's going to be a fully immersive experience where you're literally sitting there on the front lines thinking, dear God, if I die here, I'm dead, right? Like that's what I'm actually feeling. And so there's so many use cases when it comes to gaming where the metaverse and this digital world opens up. And so I think it just makes the most amount of sense. Like you try and explain to someone, hey, I've got this digital real estate and, my avatar can stay in there. And people are like, what? And like, it's got that you're telling me it's worth like $30,000, this one piece of land. It's very, very hard for people to wrap their head around that. However, the gaming side of it is quite easy for people to have that adoption into the metaverse.
Yeah, part of the question is like, what are you going to do? Like, what's the utility? What are you going to do if you walk around a metaverse? You're going to talk to people? Okay, social. There you go. You're going to go shopping? Maybe. Yeah, I guess. You're going to go to a park? What am I going to do in a park, like a virtual park? I'm going to talk to people or I'm going to go shopping. Like so far, the use cases are basically those two things or play games. And play games is social with, objectives and doing things in fun ways. So gaming is just like a natural part of like the extension. Like there's nothing else to do except for play games in some senses.
I mean, you're essentially playing a game of life. Like that's like in those examples where you're talking about walking around and what do? You go to a park. Like people like that shit. They do. Like it's kind of crazy. And it's getting to a point where people are just going to be sitting in their homes and not actually going out. It's like, do I want to go out to a bar and start virtually drinking with my avatar? And you've got, like my mind goes to crazy, crazy places where like your headset has like alcohol attached to it. So you feel like you're actually drinking with the buddies.
You got to design this. That's fantastic.
There's just so many different possibilities for where we're going to. And I think the thing that underpins it all and is required is using the blockchain technology, using things like NFTs to verifiably own these assets like you've never been able to before. So it's such an exciting time. And I'm so glad to be building a game that is really, really pushing the boundaries of things like graphics and stuff like that.
So I do want to talk about that. So it sounds like you and I were kind of coming together on a couple of things. There's got to be this willingness, this internal willingness to engage in a metaverse world. Like, I want to go there and do something. I want to feel safe enough to engage in activity. I want to be immersed. And like, there is this sort of sense of that. And ownership is a part of that, right? I feel like I have value in cryptocurrency and blockchain-based technologies and those assets. And so I'll take those seriously in a virtual world. It makes it more real. The other side of this is the sensory as well. Like, there is that immersion. You put on goggles so you feel like you're really there in a war zone, or you feel like you're really drinking from your beer hat. You guys, Illuvium has clearly made this big emphasis on graphics quality. You talk about it a lot online. You guys just released a trailer, I think it was last weekend, right? Last Friday, with this amazing graphics. Can you talk a little bit about your choices there? Like, why go for graphics? It's crypto gaming. Like, you don't always have to go for the nicest graphics. A lot of people just do, 8-bit sorts of things. Even outside of crypto blockchain gaming, people just kind of do 8-bit things. There's a wide variety. What are your design choices? Why did you guys choose to go that graphics route? Talk a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, so I think when we first met up, our art director, Von Neumann, was not unveiled. And so he's actually our third brother. And that was kind of like a cool thing. And he's been in the CGI industry for 20 years now. And the guy's only like 33 years old. He's been doing it for a very, very, very long time. And when I first went to him, it was kind of weird. Like, whenever someone would ask about the story, I would kind of like skip Von Neumann out of it. But now that we've unveiled him through the trailer, I can really, really explain that he's similar to me in that I'm a super competitive person and I'm not willing to lose to literally anyone, right? I'll die before I lose to someone. And so he's got that same mentality. And when I first came to him, I said, look, this is what we're talking about here. Like, he had his own things going on. He was over CGI. He's like, I've gotten to the pinnacle of it. He does training courses on like how to do lighting and use different softwares. Had thousands and thousands of people that were learning off him. And when I came to him and I showed him blockchain gaming, he was like, what is, like, dude, I'm not even going close to this. Like, I'm not, like, this is back of the napkin stuff in a bar, like scribbles, and you're telling me this stuff is going for like tens of thousands of dollars. And he basically said, I can't do that. Like, if we're doing this, we're doing it properly. And I want the best graphics in the world. And when you have that same mindset as I do, where it's just not an option to not go out and deliver that, we had our devs, and as you know, we've got a lot of AAA devs from studios that we've poached across and got working for us now. They're sitting there going, dude, this workflow is not going to work. Like, it's just the game won't run at the frame rate that you need to. It's just not going to be possible. And Grant was relentless and said, no, I don't care about your old flows and how it's done traditionally. I'm bringing this new way of combining this like workflow that spans across, seriously, from concepting, modeling, texturing, animation, sound. It's all required to build one of these alluvials and to design them. And he literally would just said, I do not care. I'm not building a game unless it has the best graphics in the world, and not blockchain based, as in we're taking on Pokemon, we're taking on League of Legends, we're taking on World of Warcraft, that type of stuff.
If you're making a game using brand new, comparatively, technology, blockchain technology, why not also make something pushing the boundaries of technology in other fields? That's kind of what I see. Like, well, we're already going for this moonshot here. Like, let's make sure it's fantastic on these other elements. Oh, we're innovative. And then to have graphics that are also innovative and pushing those boundaries, it makes sense.
Yeah, and the same thing with Aaron as well. I said to him originally, there's two key things that are missing. There's a reason why there hasn't been mainstream adoption. People have been begging for real world ownership of their assets for decades in games, and spanning across so many different titles, huge titles where you literally spend 10 years of your life and then you leave the game and it's over. There's no selling of your assets. There's no marketplaces. And so, you got to ask the question, why the hell have mainstream people not jumped into blockchain gaming? And there's two main reasons for me. First one is what we just spoke about. There's nothing that's going to make big time gamers gravitate to blockchain games right now because the graphics just simply aren't there. But the second thing that isn't there is what keeps you in the game, which is your lore, the backstory, the strategy. All of these things, all of these elements are what make up a AAA game. And it's very hard to do it. You know, we've got 5 game designers on now, and they're all working towards making this an unbelievable experience when you're walking through the Illuvium world. We want to turn this into a franchise where there's a motion picture, where you've got a Netflix series. Grant's got ideas of doing like this documentary one day. And so you need all of these elements with the graphics. Then on top of that, you've got this play to earn mechanism where we're giving out $1.2 billion of in-game yield, which is just unheard of in terms of gaming. And so things like esports tournaments and all these things become available where we can start really competing with the big dogs in the industry, like your Blizzards and like Ubisofts and EA games. And so that's what Illuvium is, right? It's encompassing all of the elements of a real AAA game. And it's not just us now. You know, I'm an active investor in the space. There's so many big teams that have seen the light now. And over the next 4 or 5 years, it's not just going to be Illuvium. There's going to be 10, 15, 20 other titles that are bringing the same quality. Yeah, it's coming. It is coming.
Now, when we talk about sort of immersive gameplay, this AAA style gameplay, it's not just the graphics and the rendering. It's also sound, it's gameplay mechanics, it's story. You mentioned the lore. And my question is there a future for these to feature more prominently? It sounds like a lot of people are working on these elements as well. Just in terms of like sound design, is a really interesting piece of big games that makes people feel immersed. Like if something happens over here, it happens on this side of the speakers, or surround sound, sorts of things like that to give that. Is that something that blockchain game designers are thinking about now? Or maybe the question is, are there enough AAA game designers and traditional game designers that are helping blockchain designers think about those things now?
Yeah, I think there is, right? There's been a big influx of projects start coming out. And I mean, you see it in mainstream gaming. There's indie games, and they might have 1 sound engineer, 2 sound engineers max. We've got 9. We've literally got 9 people in our team. I mean, we're at, I think, 160 core contributors now. These guys are literally Hollywood movie sound artists that have worked on the best of the best titles in Hollywood. And they've seen the light. Like, the thing about artists and the thing about developers, they're on the internet all the time, right? They're in chat rooms, they're in forums, they're searching what is the latest technology. And NFTs over the last 12 months has grabbed enough people that they've been working in studios for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're thinking that the next big thing in gaming is NFTs and verifiable ownership and play to earn. And so I remember back 12 months ago when we were trying to get these guys on board, it was kind of like, whoa, you pay in crypto, you're going to give me tokens, like, is that equity? And it's like, it's not equity. And like, our onboarding process was like 95% trying to explain that it's not a scam.
Yeah.
And whereas now, 12 months on, and obviously, we've got a lot of traction and a lot of people have heard about us, but getting really good talent is getting easier and easier and easier. And, I've talked to 3 or 4 teams now that are in stealth mode, which are probably going to be coming out early next year, not in terms of the game, but coming out of stealth mode. And these guys are not mucking around. Like, they have worked in the industry delivering AAA games, and they're going to bring their people across because they have this education now where they're like, this is a real thing. Like, Axie Infinity is changing lives. Whether you think the game is amazing or not, it's changing lives. It's changing the way that the gaming industry is literally built on, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's inevitable that not just sound guys, there's modelers, there's texturers, there's artists, there's devs. They're all coming across, and hopefully they come to Illuvium. That's the idea.
You bring up Axie as changing lives. The adoption of SLP in Indonesia and the Philippines, the ability to share that game and scale that game. It's not just one thing. It's not just a catchy game and people could earn yield. It's like a confluence of things. The availability of help forums to propagate and be supplied by user information. There's all this stuff in that one example that it sounds like is also happening in wider crypto and Web3 is the understanding that, cryptocurrency is an alternative option for value transfer. And I can sell it and get dollars to pay my rent if I need it, or I can hold it sometimes as a replacement for equity or whatever people want to do. Like that is becoming less of a, educational thing. Yes, if you work for a place, you can get benefits. Like there are companies that do all that. And really kind of pushing the industry forward to be able to make people say like, okay, well, that's an alternative for me to go work there. I could do that. It's not like, jumping off a cliff and doing something completely weird. It has that familiarity to it, which just takes some time. Some of the people I've talked to, had a chance to go to NFT NYC. I was hoping to catch up with you there. You didn't make it.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of talk about this history of gaming and digital ownership as skins, like for CSGO skins, just for example, or people having to go to the black market. If you got a good character full of good gear on World of Warcraft, you got to go to the black market and you got to go sell it. You lose all that, everything that you might have attached to that as well. And of course, it's less trusted, less third party. NFTs in particular and blockchain in general lets that happen, like kind of removes some of the middlemen of that, removes a lot of the trust and makes it a lot more of a real interaction in many senses. And that catching on is another one of these sort of elements where like, oh yeah, that's a very possible thing that happens. That makes sense. I have digital ownership there. How are you guys thinking about digital ownership? You said there's this amazing amount of yield in Illuvium. So there's the token. What are these other elements of ownership that kind of underpin the skin in the game? That's the title of this panel. What's the skin in the game that people have when they play?
So the skin in the game for us, right, is essentially, so if you think about it in Pokemon terms, imagine if back playing the Pokemon Red on Game Boy, right? You go back 21 years ago. And yes, they were the most pixelated bullshit art that you could possibly get. But I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? And I loved that game. Like that was my life. Imagine if I could still own, like on a memory card somewhere, that someone could format in a way and that I could put it into on Web3, some site that I can display those original Pokemon that I captured back 20 years ago, and it's verifiable on the blockchain. And then you think about, okay, what if Pokemon Go, the game that took the entire world by storm, you got people on bridges, like risking their lives trying to capture these different Pokemon, but for no reason, you don't own it. Imagine though, if you could own it. And so I use that example because firstly, a lot of people don't realize that the way that we're keeping our characters scarce, which I think is critically important when you're talking about in-game economy. Every set, once we release a new set, you can no longer capture any of those alluvials. So in the first set, you've got 150 different characters. You've got 7 different regions that you can go out into this open, immersive world. You get your shards, you capture this alluvial. 10 years from now, if you might not be playing Illuvium anymore, I'm sure there's so many people that are sitting on Fortnite skins where they were OG skins that people who are just starting to play the game now are like, I would love to have that skin. I can hardly ever see it. It's so rare. That's how we're imagining Illuvium. And, when you think, hey, I had that Genesis set 1 of Squiz and no one else has got that, or there's only 100 people on Earth who have that, and it's verifiable, it's on the blockchain, you can sell it whenever you want. That's the main thing that we're talking about. And obviously, you've got things like weapons, skins, enhancements, all of those different things. But the thing that I'm most excited about is owning my characters. Like that's never been done before in a game. And I think once people realize that, once people go out into the world and capture one of these alluvials and then go, now I can sell this for real money, that is when the light bulb is going to go off in people's heads. And it's just never been done before.
One of the things that I've noticed as I've gotten more into NFTs, some of these PFPs, I got a couple of them, is, there's value. Like I could sell them at any time. And that's frequently said. But what kind of is an interesting phenomenon, I could sell them, but because I can sell them, I don't want to. Like those are mine. I like, and I feel guilty. Like I go on to OpenSea or whatever, and I'm like, oh well, I could, here's the floor price. I'm like, I don't want to. I'm a part of this community. This is something that I have. It's not a core part of my identity either. It's not like I am this PFP. Some people may, and that's fine. But it's like, no, I have it, and very few people have it, and it's special to me. And if somebody uses it as their avatar, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you do that? Like, it's a unique thing to me, and to have the option to do that adds to its value. The option to sell it adds to its value for me personally, emotionally. And I think back your examples of owning your characters. People create parasocial relationships with their characters and their avatars. There's a ton of gaming research on this. This is the area that I used to be a part of. And I have friends who are former avatars and characters that I no longer see anymore, but they are characters that I would inhabit, that I would, build and grow with and engage with socially, that are just gone. And that's fine. It's a nice memory for me, but it's a very different situation where people could have the option of returning to that in a real ownership way. And again, to tie back into the theme of this conversation, it's about reality in the metaverse, perception of reality, and ownership is one of these underpinning core elements of reality. Like we have things, there's object permanence and there's ownership permanence is the term I've been using.
100%. Yeah. You need to know that it's yours. And I'm the exact same, right? Where I'm going to capture these things and I know that, yes, they're going to go up in value as set 2 comes out, set 3 comes out. But there's a reason why I won't sell any of my Pokemon cards or anything like that. It's because they're mine and I will not part with them. I don't care how much money I get or whatever. But I think that the main thing here, and the thing that gaming has the ability to do, is break down that taboo nature of crypto, because you're just gaming, right? And once someone has that ownership, and let's say they go, okay, now I've got 2 Squizzes, so maybe I do want to sell one, or I've got 3 Atlases and I do want to sell one instead of fusing them or whatever. That person who has never been introduced to crypto, they just are a gamer. He or she is going to go onto our Illuvium, which is our exchange, sell it, and go, okay, well, now I've got this ETH, and this ETH can be converted into US dollars. Do I actually do that? Or do I start looking into other things in crypto like banking and, lending and things like that? And so I think the on-ramp that gaming produces for the rest of the crypto and DeFi space is unparalleled.
I had a lot of fun in that discussion, as you can tell, and I can't wait to see Kieran's Metaverse beer helmet. Now, listeners, if you have questions or thoughts about the episode, leave me and Kieran a comment on Twitter. You can find all the links in the podcast description. Next, help me grow the Chainlink podcast to give more projects a voice to speak to the Chainlink community and beyond. Rate and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcasting app is, and make sure to follow Chainlink on Spotify as well. Follow me on Twitter @AndyBoyan and share this episode with your friends. Also, follow Chainlink Today on Twitter @Chainlink Today to get a deeper perspective on the founders and projects building with Chainlink middleware. Thanks for hanging out. I'll catch you next time.